Hello there, students. Thank you for being part of this presentation. My name is Luis Silva, and today we're focusing on world history, world societies between 1919 and 1939. What will we learn today? Today we're going to examine world societies and the influence of Albert Einstein on science, Sigmund Freud on social thinking, and Pablo Picasso on art. We are also going to focus on describing the rise of fascism in Europe and Asia by comparing the policies of Benito Mussolini in Italy, Adolf Hitler in Germany, and Hirohito in Japan. Let's move on. Important changes took place in the 20 years between the two world wars, from 1919 all the way to 1939. Let's read some of the information that we have in front of us. Number one, British promised Palestine to both the Arabs and the Jewish. Number two, 1918 to 1920, treaties divided up German, Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, and Russian lands. Number three, in 1920, the Allies temporarily run territories carved from the Ottoman Empire. Number four, the Soviets formed after revolution and civil war in Russia. And lastly, number five, in 1923, Turkey is formed in Ottoman homeland. So what was Europe like after World War I? Well, all you can do is look at this picture and you have the answer. Europe was completely destroyed after this war. In Europe, the war led to a sense of bitterness and pessimism among nations. Many European nations were destroyed and bankrupted by years of fighting along the Western Front. Russia was destroyed after World War I in a 3-year civil war that led to communism and the formation of the Soviet Union. The harshness of the Treaty of Versailles created bitterness in Germany, who were unable to pay reparations. The Italians were angry when they did not receive land along the Adriatic coast. The horrors of World War I changed people's attitudes about progress. Remember, prior to World War I, the main idea among Europeans was progress. Well, that idea was completely shattered because of World War I. After the war, people started questioning traditional beliefs. But what were some of the new ideas in the post-war era? Austrian-born Sigmund Freud revolutionized psychology. He believed the mind has conscious and subconscious thoughts that affect people's behavior. You can see here from the image to the left, you see what Sigmund Freud explained about the conscious levels, the preconscious levels, and the unconscious levels of the mind. And you also have basically an image, a picture of Sigmund Freud to the right hand side. By the way, you're more than welcome to pause this video so you can see what Sigmund Freud explained about both conscious levels, preconscious levels, and unconscious levels of the mind. German-born Albert Einstein revolutionized physics. His theories on light, relativity, and energy disproved many of Isaac Newton's discoveries from the 1600s. Very important individual in world history. By the way, eventually Albert Einstein became an immigrant as he immigrated to the United States and became a United States citizen. Very important contribution by an immigrant to the United States. Now, the arts became very important during this particular time period. New abstract art like Pablo Picasso's Cubism, or using geometric shapes, and Salvador Dali's Surrealism, or dreamlike art, reacted against traditional art forms. As you can see here, you have the different images that were created. Very important images that changed the world and brought a new perspective in terms of art. But what was America like after World War I? Well, While European nations struggled to rebuild and pay for the war, some world nations benefited from World War I. Japan gained wealth by selling supplies to the Allies and increased its position as the strongest nation in Asia. The United States was the wealthiest nation in the world and a major world power that created the League of Nations but never joined the League of Nations. After World War I, the United States entered the Roaring Twenties, that era of mass production, mass consumption. Mass production in factories led to new consumer goods and high wages for workers. The automobile became very inexpensive and also very popular. A lot of people could actually buy automobiles. Electric appliances and radios were also very popular. By the way, the radio became one of the first ways of communicating information to everybody, basically. And they were very inexpensive, so people could afford to purchase a radio and listen to news, listen to music, and all of this contributed to the American culture, and even going beyond that, the world culture. Americans enjoy themselves at the movies, at sporting events, and also enjoyed jazz clubs, like you see here on the image to the right, and you also see sports during this particular time period with the image to the left. The United States used its wealth to help European nations repay their debts and rebuild after the war. The United States would give loans to Germany. Germany would use that money to pay Britain and France for reparations. And Britain and France would use that money to pay the war loans that US had actually lent them so much money, so they had to pay the United States back. So it was a cycle basically that was going on here, as you can see from the image to your right. But what changed in America in the 1930s? The Roaring Twenties came to an end in 1929 when the stock market crashed. Bank failures and high unemployment led to what became known as the Great Depression. You can see from the image here that basically the United States was extremely prosperous, and in 1929 basically everything fell apart. The Great Depression shattered the economy of the United States and the economies of many countries around the world, as banks failed, business failed, and this created mass unemployment. As you can see here from the image to your right, these were the lines of people trying to get food, people trying to get something that would help them survive during this particular time period of the Great Depression. And by the way, the world highest standard of living basically collapsed. That highest standard of living that the United States enjoyed during the 1920s basically crumbled, and in the 1930s that was no longer the case. The Depression in America triggered a worldwide depression in the 1930s when international trade declined and United States investment in Europe came to an end. As you can see here, world imports and world exports, basically world trade from 1929 all the way to 1933, it basically collapsed. And this led to the Great Depression all over the world. The depression led to a sharp rise in unemployment in Europe. Once again, you're more than welcome to pause the video so you can analyze the unemployment rate in basically Europe from 1928 all the way to 1938. Based on all of this information, we need to answer the following question. Why did powerful dictators came to power in Europe in the 1920s and 1930s? You see here to the left, you have Adolf Hitler, and to the right, you have Benito Mussolini, who told his people that he was going to get Italy back to that old glory that the Romans had enjoyed for so long. In Germany, the situation grew desperate by the 1930s, and the Weimar government became very unpopular. People completely disliked this government, obviously because they felt that the government was not there for them to help them in difficult times. The Weimar Republic was already unpopular because of government leaders signed the Treaty of Versailles. They really rejected the Treaty of Versailles because they thought it was extremely unfair for the nation itself, and that they already disliked this government, and the Great Depression actually made it even worse. To pay war reparations and rebuild the country, the government had to print money, which led to a hyperinflation. In other words, the money was no longer good. If you can see the image to the right here, you see that kids are actually playing with the money because it was worthless. They were just basically pieces of paper that represented the currency of Germany, but without any value attached to it. Unemployment in Germany reached 30%. This was horrific for people. They had no jobs, they had no money, they had no food to feed their families. And this obviously opened the door for dictators to take over Germany. Like Germany, Italians felt betrayed by the treaty, had a suffering economy, and saw its unemployment rise similar to Germany. Due to the economic depression, bitterness, and desperation, powerful dictators will seize power in Germany and in Italy. These dictators played an important role in causing World War II. And by the way, here you have to the left information related to world economic depression. You see the immediate effects and you see the long-term effects. The immediate effects was that millions became unemployed worldwide. Businesses went bankrupt. Governments take emergency measures to protect economies. Citizens lose faith in capitalism and democracy, so therefore they turn to dictators. And nations turn towards authoritarian leaders such as Benito Mussolini and Adolf Hitler. Now the long-term effects. The Nazis take control in Germany. Fascists come to power in other countries. Democracies try social welfare programs. Japan expands its control in East Asia. And World War II breaks out. These were the immediate and long-term effects of the 1920s and 1930s. We have come to an end of this presentation. Please make sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next presentation.